Welcome. It is fantastic to have you joining us for today's deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
If you are someone who, spends just an inordinate amount of time analyzing your morning pour over.
We all know the type.
Right, exactly. Or maybe you've been closely tracking how commercial-grade cafe technology is just aggressively migrating into the home kitchen right now.
Oh, yeah.
If that's you, you are going to find today's stack of sources particularly compelling. Our mission today is to evaluate this really fascinating shift in roasting hardware.
It really is a shift, yeah.
We are examining a product listing and all the associated technical specs straight from the official Canadian distributor of Kaleido roasters. Specifically, we are putting the magnifying glass on the Kaleido M1 Lite 200-gram coffee roaster.
And just to anchor this in the current landscape for you, we are looking at a pre-order item here.
Right.
It's from Kaleido Roasters Canada, with shipments scheduled to dispatch at the end of March. And the overarching narrative surrounding this specific light model is really its positioning. It is deliberately engineered to act as an accessible entry point into professional-grade profiling.
Yeah, the sources frame it as this bridge, right? Like a bridge for the modern home roaster or the small-scale lab that wants serious data without all the traditional infrastructural overhead.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this, because when we talk about jumping into quote-unquote professional-grade profiling, the traditional image that leaps to mind is, well, it's a massive cast-iron drum roaster.
Oh, yeah, the behemoths.
Right. You think of heavy ductwork, dedicated gas lines.
And venting that basically requires structural changes to your house.
Exactly. But the documentation for the M1 Lite paints a vastly different physical reality. The literature describes a rather compact footprint.
It does.
What exactly are the physical parameters we are looking at here?
Well, the specs are actually a bit startling when you consider the thermal output, which we will definitely get to.
Yeah.
But physically, the M1 Lite weighs in at just 9 kilograms. Yeah, so for a spatial comparison, you are looking at something with roughly the footprint and heft of a high-end stand mixer.
Or like a prosumer espresso machine.
Precisely. The exact dimensions are approximately 30 by 18 by 25 centimeters.
That's tiny.
It is. But the most critical data point for anyone evaluating this for a home setup or a small R&D lab is the power requirement.
Right, the power.
It operates entirely on a standard 120-volt configuration.
I want to pause on that 120-volt specification because it completely changes the barrier to entry.
It does.
Historically, if you wanted anything approaching a stable thermal core for consecutive batch roasting, you were inevitably calling an electrician.
Oh, absolutely.
You're paying to run a dedicated 220-volt line to your garage or basement.
Yeah.
But this implies you can effectively place this next to your toaster and pull enough juice from a standard North American wall outlet to properly develop a roast.
That's the claim, yes.
But does a standard 120-volt line actually provide enough overhead to push through first crack without stalling?
Right. That is the perennial challenge of 120-volt roasters. But the architecture here bypasses the traditional limitations.
How so?
Well, they aren't relying on heavy, thick carbon steel drums that require massive energy just to heat up and maintain temperature.
Okay.
The M1 Lite utilizes a carbon fiber infrared direct fire heating system.
Ah, infrared.
Yeah, it draws 1,000 watts, which is well within the safety margins of a standard 15-amp kitchen circuit. By moving to infrared, the energy transfer is fundamentally different.
Let's drill into that energy transfer, because traditional conductive roasting, where the beans are physically tumbling against hot metal, has a lot of thermal inertia.
So much inertia.
You turn the gas down, but the heavy metal drum stays blistering hot for minutes. How does the carbon fiber infrared system alter that dynamic?
It changes the physics of the roast entirely. Conductive heat is essentially searing the bean from the outside in.
Right.
Infrared radiation, on the other hand, penetrates the cellular structure of the bean more effectively. It's heating the moisture inside the bean directly.
That makes sense.
But to your point about thermal inertia, the primary advantage of this carbon fiber setup is agility.
Agility.
Yes. When you apply 1,000 watts of infrared energy, the reaction is nearly instantaneous. When you cut the power, the radiant heat drops off almost immediately.
Oh, wow.
You aren't fighting a lagging heat curve caused by 50 pounds of hot iron.
So you are avoiding the scenario where you completely cut the heat, but your bean temperature keeps rocketing upward anyway.
Because the drum is holding all that latent energy exactly.
That level of responsiveness sounds like it would give you incredibly tight control, especially if you were trying to stretch out a very specific phase of the roast, like extending the Maillard phase for a bit more body.
What's fascinating here is how that agility pairs with the specific capacity of the machine.
Okay.
The M1 Lite is strictly designed for micro batches, specifically in the 50 to 200 gram range.
Right.
In the commercial roasting world, 50 grams is barely enough to cup. But in the context of a home enthusiast, an educator running a sensory class or a professional roasting a sample of an ultra-premium lot, that range is highly strategic.
It really is. I'm thinking back to a time I was tasked with profiling a tiny, highly experimental lot of anaerobic washed Panamanian geisha.
Oh, I can imagine.
The raw green coffee was wildly expensive. If your minimum batch size is 1 kilogram, the anxiety of potentially baking or scorching that first exploratory batch is intense.
You are essentially gambling with the beans at that point.
Yes, but at a 50-gram capacity, you have the runway to test multiple profiles without burning through your inventory.
It completely reframes the psychology of roasting. The financial penalty for a failed roast drops to almost zero.
Yeah.
You can push the limits. You can intentionally stall a 50-gram batch just to see how the cup defects present on the cupping table.
That's a great point.
But executing a perfect microbatch isn't just about applying heat accurately. It is equally about removing that heat the second your profile demands it.
The cooling phase.
Right. The thermal momentum we discussed earlier applies to the beans themselves. Once you drop them from the chamber, they are essentially cooking themselves.
Which is where the cooling infrastructure comes into play. The technical sheet emphasizes an industrial-grade rapid cooling fan integrated into the unit. For anyone who has chased a highly specific, bright acidity in an Ethiopian natural, you know that if you don't halt the roast development the absolute second you drop the beans, those delicate floral notes will bake right out of the coffee in the cooling tray.
The physics of stopping the Maillard reaction dictate that you need to pull the bean temperature down to room temperature in under a few minutes, ideally faster.
Yeah.
The industrial rapid cooling fan on the M1 Lite is engineered to evacuate that heat aggressively, locking in the chemical structure you just spent 15 minutes carefully developing.
That is crucial.
It is. But alongside the thermal management, there is the perennial logistical nightmare of indoor roasting.
Let me guess. Chaff management.
Chaff management.
The dreaded chaff. For anyone who has ever tried to roast indoors with early generation or DIY equipment, you know the struggle.
It's a mess.
You spend half your time trying to rig up a shop vac to your exhaust just to keep your kitchen from looking like it was caught in a blizzard of dried coffee skins.
It is the single biggest pain point for indoor setups.
Yeah.
The M1 Lite addresses this by integrating an automatic chaff collector directly into the chassis.
Inside the unit itself.
Yes. Instead of relying on an external cyclone or a makeshift vacuum setup, the internal aerodynamics are designed to pull the silver skin away from the roasting chamber as it flakes off.
Wow.
It sequesters it and keeps the heating elements clean. This not only keeps your counter tidy, but significantly mitigates the volume of smoke generated.
Because burning chaff is one of the primary culprits of excessive smoke in a micro roaster.
Exactly.
So we have a sub 10 kilogram machine that runs on 120 volts, utilizing highly agile 1,000 watt infrared heat with integrated rapid cooling and internal chaff management.
That's the hardware summary, yeah.
The hardware architecture alone is a massive leap from the modified popcorn poppers of the early home roasting days.
Oh, absolutely.
But hardware is ultimately just raw potential. Here's where it gets really interesting. The software integration. Because without a way to parse the data, you are still essentially flying blind.
The software is where the M1 Lite makes its strongest argument for professional viability.
Okay.
The official literature explicitly labels the machine as artisan-ready, interfacing via USB or Bluetooth.
Artisan.
Right. For you, the listener, understanding the role of artisan in the modern roasting workflow is crucial to understanding this machine's value. Artisan is open-source software that has essentially become the global lingua franca for roast profiling.
Right. Artisan isn't just an app, it is the industry standard.
It is.
When you plug a laptop or wirelessly connect a tablet to the M1 Lite, what specific telemetry are you pulling from the roaster's probes? Are we just looking at a basic environmental temperature and bean temperature readout?
It goes significantly deeper than that. You are getting real-time, high-resolution tracking of the environmental temperature and the bean mass, yes.
Okay.
But Artisan's real power is in logging that data to calculate and display the rate of rise, or ROR.
Car.
As anyone who has chased consistency knows, the ROR curve is the heartbeat of the roast. The software calculates exactly how many degrees per minute the bean temperature is increasing, plotting it as a secondary curve on your screen.
And this is the threshold between treating roasting as a cooking task versus a scientific process.
Perfectly said.
By tracking the RRR, you can foresee a crash or a flick in your temperature momentum long before it visually manifests in the beans.
Exactly.
You aren't just reacting to the color of the coffee. You are proactively steering the thermal momentum based on predictive data.
It transitions you from qualitative observation, listening for first crack, looking at the color, to quantitative control.
Yeah.
Furthermore, Artisan logs every single adjustment you make to the power or the fan speed alongside those temperature curves.
So you have a record.
Right. If you produce a batch that cups beautifully, you have the exact schematic of how you achieved it. You could overlay that perfect background profile on your screen during your next roast and chase your own ghost, matching your power adjustments to replicate the curve perfectly.
It is the ultimate tool for repeatability.
It really is.
But I have to ask, looking at the broader product matrix Kaleido offers, they have a whole lineup. There is the M1 Standard, the M1 Pro, and the top-tier M1 Dual.
Right, the full family.
The source material explicitly positions the M1 Lite as the most affordable path to professional roasting. But clearly, to achieve a lower price point than the rest of the M1 family, surgical cuts had to be made.
Oh, inevitably.
So what does this all mean? What are the actual trade-offs when you opt for the Lite version?
The comparative analysis here is an exercise in brutalist product design. Kaleido essentially stripped away any feature that did not directly contribute to the thermocore or the data logging.
Okay, so what's missing?
The most obvious omission is the interface itself. The higher-tier M1 models feature the Kaleido system, a built-in, integrated touchscreen interface that runs its own profiling software natively.
Ah.
The M1 Lite entirely abandons the onboard computer. It features a vastly simplified light panel design. You are entirely reliant on bringing your own PC or tablet running Artisan to visualize and log your roast.
The bring your own screen philosophy?
Yes.
I actually find that incredibly pragmatic. We've all seen what happens to smart appliances when the built-in tablet becomes obsolete after 4 years, even though the hardware underneath is perfectly fine.
That happens all the time.
By decoupling the screen, you are essentially future-proofing the machine against software obsolescence. You just upgrade your laptop or your iPad, and the roaster's brain gets an upgrade. What else did they pull back on?
They removed several convenience and sensory features. The M1 Lite does not have a carry handle, and it utilizes a simplified outer body design compared to the full premium chassis of the Pro and Dual.
Right.
It also lacks a trier light.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, a trier, the small scoop you pull out to visually inspect and smell the beans during the roast, usually has a dedicated inspection light on commercial machines. The Lite skips this.
Okay.
Additionally, while we discussed the industrial rapid cooling fan and automatic chaff collector on the Lite, it's worth noting that the Pro and Dual models step up to what they term advanced or ultra-fast cooling and exhaust systems, paired with a Pro-level chaff collector.
I can see the lack of a trier light being a point of friction for some traditionalists.
For sure.
Pulling the trier, smelling the development, watching the color change under a dedicated daylight bulb, that is a highly tactile, romantic part of the roasting process.
It is.
But I suppose if you are glued to your Artisan ROR curve on your iPad, you are relying far less on visual confirmation anyway. You are flying by the instruments, not looking out the window.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the engineering philosophy behind the M1 Lite becomes very clear. The cuts they made are almost entirely cosmetic or secondary. What it retains is the actual engine. Despite being the entry point, it does not compromise on the core roasting mechanics.
Right.
It retains the exact same 50 to 200 gram batch capacity as the flagship M1 Dual. It utilizes the exact same 1,000 watt carbon fiber infrared direct fire system. It still incorporates automatic chaff collection. And crucially, it doesn't lock you out of professional data. It still offers full USB and Bluetooth integration with Artisan.
That is a remarkable value proposition. They didn't downgrade the heating elements or throttle the capacity to force you into a higher tier.
No, they didn't.
If you have been hitting a wall with an entry-level home machine, maybe you are frustrated because you can't log your data or your machine lacks the responsiveness to hit a declining RR. This feels like the logical graduation point.
It's the perfect bridge.
You bypass the complexity and the expense of the integrated touchscreen systems, but you retain 100% of the actual roasting capability.
It democratizes access to professional methodologies. The distributor's listing rightly categorizes the M1 Lite for home roasters, beginners, and microbatch profiling.
Yeah.
Conversely, they position the higher models for advanced semi-pros who demand maximum dual-system control, or users who simply prefer an all-in-one standalone unit without needing an external laptop.
Makes sense.
By offering the Lite, Kaleido is acknowledging a massive segment of the market that just wants the raw thermal performance and the artisan data without paying for the bells and whistles.
It is a fascinating study in product segmentation. To synthesize the sources we've examined today, the Kaleido M1 Lite 200-gram coffee roaster is effectively shrinking a professional workflow down into a 9-kilogram package.
That's it.
It allows you to run a 1,000-watt infrared-driven, data-logged roasting session right on your kitchen counter, pulling power from a standard 120-volt outlet. You get the agility of carbon fiber heat, the cleanliness of automatic chaff collection, and the absolute precision of artisan profiling, all by consciously trading away built-in screens and minor ergonomic luxuries.
And return to the logistics of the Canadian distributor's listing, it is worth reiterating that this is currently in a pre-order phase, with fulfillment slated for the end of March.
Right.
For those actively analyzing the market, the distributor is currently running a spring sale promotion, and the code SALO100 can be applied at checkout.
It really is incredible to see how rapidly the barrier between the commercial roasting floor and the home kitchen is collapsing. We are at a point where the hardware is no longer the bottleneck. The only limit is the user's willingness to learn the craft.
It represents a fundamental paradigm shift, and leaving you with something to consider as you examine your own coffee rituals.
Yeah.
With industrial-grade rapid cooling, precision infrared heating, and high-resolution data logging, now compact enough to sit right next to your blender.
Right.
It raises the question, as the tools of the master roaster enter the everyday kitchen, how long until the concept of buying pre-roasted coffee feels as antiquated to the true aficionado as buying pre-ground beans?
That is an incredibly provocative point to end on, and really a perfect encapsulation of where the industry is heading. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this deep dive today. We hope you walk away with a deeper understanding of the technology shaping the future of coffee. Until next time, keep exploring and happy roasting.